Today we're going to create our first flash animation. We're going to create a snowball that is going to go from one side of the screen to the other. Let's get started. When you launch Flash, you need to determine which action script you want to use. ActionScript is the language of Flash. If you choose 3.0, that's the newest one. That's the one that we're going to choose today. So click on ActionScript 3.0. Notice that you see your workspace. This is our stage. Here is our timeline. Here are our tools located on the right-hand side. We have a property inspector and a library that holds the elements that we create. We have additional tools over here, and we call this the Essentials window. So when I go down to the bottom, if you wanted to take a look at what window type that we're looking at, our workspace is Essentials. Our workspace is Essentials. That's what gives us this look. All right, let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is determine your stage size. There is a handout that I gave you that has default stage sizes. We're going to be creating a pop-up, so we're going to define our stage size 720 by 300. This is similar to the first step in Dreamweaver. Modify Document. Define your dimensions, and for us it's going to be 720 by 300. We'll stick with our pixels, choose a background color, and since we're dealing with a snowball, let's do a sky blue. The frame rate in Flash is 24 frames per second. In Director, it's 30 frames per second. If you were going to bring your Flash animation into Director, you could change your frame rate so it would match. For us, we're going to stick with the default Flash frame rate. I love the autosave. This is new in CS6. You can have it save your file every 10 minutes, or you can adjust this. I'm going to stick with the default here. Hit OK. In order to see your entire screen, I recommend going up to the top arrow and saying Fit into Window. In this way, you see your entire stage as big as it would fit into this window. All right, let's go down to Layer 1. Please get into the habit of naming your layers. So I'm going to name Layer 1 Snowball. Notice that I have an empty keyframe. We call this circle a keyframe. Select that keyframe. It is in this keyframe where we're going to draw our snowball. Go over to the tools on the right-hand side. You're going to notice that some of these tools have embedded other tools. Notice the little arrows in the bottom right-hand corner. Go to the rectangle tool and select the oval tool. Notice how the property window changes depending upon the tool that is selected. To draw my snowball, I'm going to have a white outline. I don't want a black fill. I am going to use, let me put in a gradient. So I'm going to choose a gradient from one of the ones below, but obviously we don't want dirty snow. So I'm going to go in and change this fill. How do I do that? Color palette. So open up your color palette. This is the top tool located between the stage and your property inspector. Notice that it shows the white. I don't want black. I want a blue of some kind. So I'm going to click on a blue in my guide, and I'm going to go with that. That's okay. That looks fine for me. But I don't want my snowball to have that much blue. I really only want the gradient to start here. So I can adjust this. Notice how below the color wheel I can click this color line, and I give myself yet another color. I can actually make this white. Yes, I can go through here, but we all know hexadecimal for white based on our coding. So here I'm typing in my 6 Fs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you remember your hexadecimal? So now I just have a little blue. Maybe I might want to change that and lighten that up just a little bit. There we go. I like that. All right, so you'll see a little blue edge in the paint can. Now I have my stroke. One point stroke, I want it a little bit bigger, so I can literally just drag this to however big I would like it. And I don't want a solid line. Look at the cool stroke styles available in Flash. I want stipple. So I have defined my fill, I've defined my stroke. I can now draw my snowball. If you think that that line is too big, you can easily adjust that. We use the arrow. This is a selection tool. Notice I can click just on the line and make the change. So I can reduce that if I wanted to. In order to select the object, does that look like it's selected? I only clicked once on the circle. Notice what happens. Oh, it's not selected. So in order to select all parts of the object, that's the outline and the inside, we would double click. So double clicking is something that's new in Director that you might not be used to. All right. Now, very important to see how these lines work in Director. Okay. Also, take a look at your circle. Don't really care to have that oval all the way around, that gradient. I want the gradient to fit in one section. So in order to change that, I can pour in my color. Go grab that paint bucket tool. In the paint bucket tool, notice where you pour is where you actually see the gradient. So go ahead and adjust your gradient. Okay. You have your snowball selected. What we're going to do now is we're going to convert this baby. Right now it's just an object, but we want to add this to our library because we could have additional snowballs. But more specifically, we want it to become a symbol. Why? MotionTween requires that the objects are symbols. So in order to create this object a symbol, we hit an F key. Look at above the keyboard. F8 converts a object to a symbol. It brings up this pop-up window. You can also find this under the Modify menu, Convert to Symbol. Let's give it a name, and I'm going to call it Snowball. There are 3 types of symbols. A graphic, that's what we're working with today. But you could also have a movie clip. A movie clip is an animation of some kind, such as a beating heart. Or a button. We know that's used for interactivity. All right, so we're going to keep it with a graphic. We also determine our registration point, and by default, I love putting my registration point in the center of my object, especially when I'm working with circles. But you can choose whichever registration point you want. When I hit OK, notice that I see my registration point with a plus, and I see a box around it. That indicates to you it's a symbol. Notice now in my property window, it tells me that it's a graphic symbol. If I ever wanted to change the type of symbol, if I made a mistake and called it a movie clip and said, it's not a movie clip, I could always change that in here. Look in my library. This is my snowball, and that's the icon that represents a graphic symbol. All right, now we have created a symbol. We've drawn an object and converted it by hitting F8. Now it's time to create our animation. Let's put our cursor over, or let's move our graphic so it's over on the left. If I want this animation to last 24 frames, I can put my cursor in frame 24. Now I want to add frames here so it knows the distance. And there's another keyboard shortcut, F5, that allows me to do this. I could also right-click and say Insert Frames, but I tend to use the keyboard shortcuts. F5 will do the same thing. So it knows that on the timeline for this 1 second, it's going to move this object. All right, my cursor is in frame 24. Do you see the blue highlight? Click. Oops, I forgot to turn on MotionTween. Got to turn on the MotionTween. Right click. Right click is your friend here. Create MotionTween. And now let's click and drag and move the object to the side. Ta-da! You've just created a motion tween. To see your animation, go ahead and watch it move across the stage. Well, one of the things that we might want to do is we might want to change the way this moves from one point to the other. Take a look at your first keyframe. If I click on my first circle, that holds the symbol, notice that I have these options in my property window. What do I want to do? I want to rotate this baby. So I'm going to rotate this in a clockwise direction and now play this movie. Do you see how it rotated? Go ahead and change your rotation. Let's do it 2 times and play your movie. Now, doesn't that look more like it's flying through the air? Okay. So we can determine our rotation by clicking on our keyframe, and now it moves. Let's do one more thing. Let's add a little bit of snow to this scene. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Let me go with my rectangle tool. So let's swap out to a rectangle tool. And I'm going to stick with my stipple, but I just want my fill to be white. I don't want a gradient. So go ahead and take my white. And I'm going to make a new layer. Every item should be on separate layers when you're animating. So let me go to the bottom of my timeline and notice that first icon, it says new layer. This is going to be my snow. My snow base. Let's put snow base. Now I want this to be underneath the snow, so I'm going to drag this down so it's below the snow. Position my cursor in the empty keyframe, and now let's draw some snow. There we go. It can be big. Oh, it's got that fill. I don't want that fill. So let me choose my white and let me pour in my white. There we go. So now I have snow. Well, notice that the snow comes behind my snowball. That's because I moved my snow base down below. Now, typically, if a snowball was going across the snow, what would happen to the snowball? It would get bigger. So look how easy it is in order to make this snowball go bigger. We have something called a transform tool, and this is below your 2 selection tools. Click on your transform tool. Notice that you have arrows. Simply make your snowball bigger. Now, play your movie, and ta-da, your snowball grows bigger. Let's just say fit into frame. I'm going to reduce this so you can see the whole thing. All right, and there it is. Do you see my snowball growing bigger and rotating? So you've transformed your tool and you've created a cool animation. All right, on your own, what I'd like you to do is to create another snowball using the one in your library and have it roll, grow big, and then come up onto the top of this. Can you try it? Go ahead and try it, and then we'll do it together. Okay, so now I'm going to do this with you. Create a new layer. This is going to be my second snowball. Snowball 2. Here's my cursor. Drag and drop from the library your snowball. Now, here's the thing. You don't want that snowball to start until the first snowball ends. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my cursor in frame 25, and I'm going to insert what we call a keyframe. There we are. I'm going to have that animation happen for another second. So there's 10, 20, 24. I'm going to hit F5. Now notice I'm not seeing my other snowball, and I'm not seeing my snow base. In order for those to be viewed, again, I insert frames, F5. There's my snow base. Insert frames, F5. But here is where I want to insert my motion tween. There we go. Oops, got to get my pointer tool. Move it to the top. Do I want to resize this baby? Go ahead and resize. Now when I play my movie, there's my first and there's my second. But look, let's make it a little bit neater. If you go to your selection tool, that's your dark black arrow. Notice how you can drag this tweening line and bend it so it can look a little different. Do you see that? So now, let me resize this, make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing here. There we are. And at the beginning of this keyframe, let's make that baby rotate. So how many times do we want it to rotate? Maybe 3 times? So now let's look at our animation. And now I have a curved tweening line. There's my first and there's my second. So what have we done today? We've learned the all-important F8 to take an object and convert it to a symbol. We learned the importance of F5. F5 inserted frames so we could continue to see objects. We also learned how to insert an empty keyframe that was F6. This case, it copied what was in our first keyframe. But notice the animation doesn't happen until we start here in frame 25. We've created a shape, and in the shape we used a gradient, and we defined our gradient with the color palette. Your task for the rest of the block is to play with these tools and draw in a background. To best draw in a background, we want to protect what we've already created. So we're going to lock our snowball layers. We're going to lock our snow base so we don't accidentally edit our snow base. Let's hide if you wish. You can hide your 2 snowballs so they're out of your way. If you want to see them again, go ahead and just click on them under the eye in the timeline. But what I want you to do is play with your paintbrush, with your pencil, with your line tool, and draw. Notice that under each of these, we have something called modifiers. Modifiers choose the style of, in this case, the pencil, or the style of the brush. Look at all the brush modifiers. There's a bunch. I'll be around to help.